something had to change, and I started to listen to my needs, to my desires, and thinking to myself, how can I make it all work in a way that fulfills me and not just society's expectations or what I thought other people wanted me to do.
Hi, I'm Kelly Kessler, and I'm the host of the podcast Rewiring Health. Whether you're an entrepreneur who feels like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders trying to juggle all aspects of business, or you're a corporate employee who feels like you're pulled in multiple directions trying to excel and meet deadlines, or you're a passionate parent who feels like you pour your heart and soul into your children and there's not much left for you, you're in the right place. This podcast is designed to give you tools, tips, and strategies around how you can cultivate balance within your life, feel energized and present, and stop feeling like you're compromising your health and inner harmony. I am so glad you're here.
This was such a relatable conversation with Rim Chekroun. And maybe you've experienced this in your life. I know I have, where you have this vision for how your life is going to turn out, but your reality is very different. And it leaves you feeling unsettled. Maybe you feel exhausted. Maybe you feel overwhelmed. And you're trying to give your all to all aspects of your life. You're trying to show up as a mom. You're trying to show up for your career. And the demands are becoming overwhelming. So, how do you start to show up for yourself, your children, and your career without feeling this exhaustion? And this is what we dive into this episode. Rim has such a beautiful way of showing how she's navigated this in her life through a journey of self compassion and living her truth. Rim Chekroun is a wife, a career coach whose mission is to help career driven women overcome overwhelm and pursue personal and professional ambitions and achieve fulfillment without sacrificing family time. This was an amazing episode, and I'm so honored to have Rim on here to share her journey. And I gained so much value from this, and I hope you do too.
High achievement does not come without a price tag, and sometimes it's our health. If you're wondering if high achievement is compromising your well being, take my free quiz in the show notes. Welcome back. So excited to be joined by Rim. And I know this is going to be such a good conversation. We had connected a few weeks ago, and I just know that there's going to be so many amazing things that come out here, especially if you're someone who's like overwhelmed, feeling burnout, and feeling like you can't manage everything going on in your life. So, welcome to the podcast, Rim.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to connect with you as well. I love what you stand for. I love your mission, empowering women, overachievers, especially.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And you too. I love what you do. And we're going to dive right into that because this is something that like what you go through is something I've experienced, and I know so many women, especially moms, have experienced. So do you mind sharing your backstory of like some things that you've experienced and then how that journey brought you to what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just like you mentioned, I went through some struggles that are unfortunately similar to many other women, and it started when I was young, really, because I thought I had everything figured out, and I had this map that I needed to follow, and um, my my only goal was to make sure that I achieved the step and then the next goal and then the next goal, etc. So graduating college, making sure that I got my degree. I got a degree in engineering, and I didn't even like engineering. I just ended up there because I was good at school. I had good grades, so they told me, yeah, you should do this or you should do that. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever success leads to, right? And so I just followed the map. And then I found my corporate job, which was, good pay, safe, and all that. And I got married, I got my kid, and that's when I started to really ask myself, like, when do I get to be happy? Like,
Yeah.
um, it was surprising to see that I was just going through the motions, and I was trying to make everyone else happy and be that perfect girl. And And yeah, I was just trying to climb the ladder professionally. And at some point, I thought to myself, what kind of mother was I going to be for my son? Like, what kind of parent did I want to be? And that's when I realized I wanted to be the role model. I didn't want to be someone who, doesn't walk the talk, like, do this and do that. But then I don't apply that to myself. Like, be brave, my son, and take risk and don't be afraid, etc., etc. And I'm like, yeah, I'm playing it safe here. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's when I realized something had to change, and I started to listen to my needs, to my desires, and thinking to myself, how can I make it all work in a way that fulfills me and not just society's expectations or what I thought other people wanted me to do, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so relatable, everything you just said. And it is, it's like that level of certainty, but then because we have so much certainty, we lack fulfillment. And I also love how you say it's like, you want to lead by example to your son. And I think it's like we all get kind of, many women, we get stuck in this trap of like feeling like what we should do, what we should do, but then it's like, don't do what I did, But kids don't
Exactly.
learn by what we say, they learn by what we do. And it's so important to exude that and live the life that we desire for our kids. And it does become that trap of like, take care of yourself, but if you don't take care of yourself, like how are they going to learn to take care of themselves? So I absolutely love that. So how did you start to transition your life or transform your life from that corporate job certainty to then finding something that was fulfilling for you?
Yeah. At first, I really struggled because I was trying to find the answers on my own, like many of us do, I remember I was scrolling through LinkedIn offers and thinking, I don't know, maybe something would just pop up and resonate with me. And I would talk to my friends and ask them how they felt about their jobs. And I felt like we weren't exactly at the same place. And sometimes this made me feel pretty lonely, in my own quest. And so I ended up, luckily, I stumbled upon a post from a career coach, and that's when I told myself, oh my God, this is what I need. And she went through the exact same things that I went through, and so I hired her, and that helped me get the clarity that I needed. And as it turns out, I started working with her, and I just fell in love with coaching, and I realized that this is what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to connect with that part of me that wants to empower and inspire other women as well, to listen to that little voice that tries to speak, and we just we try to make sure that it doesn't get too loud, because otherwise it's scary and it's unsettling, and what is happening to my world? No, everything should stay that way.
Mhm.
And I think that the real trigger, though, was when we found out that my son was autistic, and that's when I told myself, wow, there are so many things that I thought I had, I thought I had everything figured out, like the school that he was going to go to, the number of um, um, languages he was going to speak, the activities, everything, and because I was struggling with, and we're probably going to speak about this as well, with perfectionism, and I wanted everything to be exactly as I imagined. And that was the moment when I told myself, okay, the universe is going to send me events, and life is going to happen. And so this is the moment for me to make my own decisions, the choices that I want for myself, for my family, and figure out what is going to work for us. And so I dived even deeper in the coaching. I got certified, and today I help other women, mostly career-driven moms who are overwhelmed and who want to pursue professional ambitions and maybe also personal ambitions, but they're afraid to do so because they don't want to sacrifice that time with their families. And so they think, well, it's complicated to make it all work. I'm just barely surviving here, juggling everything. So my goal is to help them find a way to create that balance that works for them, because we don't all have the same needs. And I think that's important. We try to model what we know, the proven, success models that we think about, because those are the ones that we grew up looking up to. And we don't really question that model and think, okay, how can I make a system work for me, for my life, for my own needs?
Yeah, it's so
And that's how I
true.
got there. Yeah.
Yeah, everything you're saying. It's like just it's like oh my gosh, yes, that's like literally like I mean I've experienced that. I know so many
Yeah.
women especially have experienced this where it's like you're trying to be everything, you're trying to do what everyone told you to do, you're trying to fit the role that you think that you should fit. You have this again that vision of what you thought it would look like and this perfect world and it's like when it doesn't it's a lot of like I don't know, did you experience a lot of like shame and guilt when it didn't fit that? Because
Absolutely.
yeah, do you mind just talking about that? And then I definitely do want to dive into that perfectionism a little bit more later on. So, yeah, can you talk about the shame and guilt? Because I think that well, I know this is something that so many people, but like women especially, because it's like
Mhm.
I don't know if it's that motherly role, but like I know I've experienced that guilt, that shame of like trying to be 100% in every aspect of your life and feeling like there's not enough of you to go around.
Exactly, exactly. This is, yeah, I definitely struggled with that a lot. And I think
Mhm.
to this day, I still need to find that balance, because I guess that's the secret. For me, it was realizing that at any given moment in your life, you're going to need to um, change the dosage. In some areas of your life, you're going to be at 80%. In some other areas, you're going to be at 20% for a while. And then you're going to, navigate through all of that as you go, because some areas of your life will need more attention than others. And so for me, I battled this a lot. I went through a depression even, because I I figured out that my son was autistic. Like, I was in the middle of my career shift. I was transitioning, I was getting certified, and I was thinking, oh my God, like, how am I going to deal with that? Like, how can I still be 100% in my career ambitions and do that transition when my son, my family needs me there at 100% as well? And so I really battled that a lot, and the guilt of being that mom that thinks about herself and her needs. But eventually I realized that if I wasn't going to listen to my needs, well, what happened was I was depressed. I was depressed because I just put it aside for a while, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to give my 100% just to my family. And at some point, it was what I needed to do. And I'm happy with that decision. But then there was a moment where I realized, okay, now we've got this part figured out. We have the appointments with the specialists done. We know exactly what to do next. So things are starting to look, brighter for us. And and so that's the moment where I can just resume and pick up where I left off. But then the guilt came again, and the shame of explaining to people that I was leaving a safe, well-paid corporate job that has some sort of status to do something completely different that I wasn't trained to do at first, and that, doesn't necessarily reflect that perfect working mom image. And I needed to learn to just listen to my voice, my inner voice, and make it sound louder than any other voice out there. Like, my voice needed to be heard. And I could see through my son's eyes that he was even more happy to see me like this. Um, most autistic kids they're even more sensitive, and they feel your energy even more than neurotypical kids. And it's impressive to see how he will pick up on my energy and it will rub off on him real quick. And that's when everything shifted in my mind, when I started to see that I was doing him a favor by pursuing my ambitions, you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like when you're more whole for everyone. And
Exactly.
but it is a hard transition to realize that because there are so many variables. And just like you talk about the pressures of like trying to conform to what everyone tells you you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But yet it's that little voice, like you're saying, it's like you have to turn up the volume because that's the only thing that's going to make you feel whole is what you need and only you know what you need. And then I also love how you talk about your energy and then how your son was responding to that because it is we all carry this energy, but if we're low and we're not taking care of ourselves, then how could we possibly take care of someone else who needs us? And that's absolutely crucial. And it's such a good point. I think it's one of those things that we need to be reminded of over and over and over again because we can get into
Yeah.
these like grooves of what is maybe more familiar
Mm-mm.
and so it is, and I just love how you talk about that. And um, as far as like, I just want to go back into like the perfectionism because that's such a huge point. And when you were describing that, like you had this all set up and this is how it was going to be. And perfectionism can be very like that rigid, this is how it has to be. There's no flexibility usually with that. So can you talk about how that's played a role in your life where you've had these subconscious beliefs of perfectionism?
Oh my God, yes. I think there are so many examples that I can think about, but there's one that really I think is the most important, at least for me in my journey, that was the most important moment when I realized that perfectionism really was present, like really present in my life. It's um, the moment but there are two actually. It's the moment I went back after maternity leave and I realized I wanted to be perfect right away. Like I wanted to show that I was back and I was going to be, the overachiever that everyone knew me to be in my job. And I really gave my everything. Like I felt ashamed every time the nanny would call me and I would like, pick up the phone. Everything all right? Okay. Um, and I'd make sure that my husband could help me out whenever I could and everything. And sometimes I would take on so much. And for example, I would come home to make sure I spend enough time with my kid. And then when I put him to sleep, I would open my laptop again and resume that report that I hadn't finished or things like that. And I would finish at midnight or, anyway, I was completely dedicated because I wanted it to be perfect. And I realized that when we did an assessment, a review with my manager back then, and she told me that I did amazing. Like I did even more than what was expected, and and that they I don't know how to express that, but it's like they didn't see all the craziness and all the effort that was behind it. Like, wow, you're doing
Yeah.
great. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
The
And then she started,
sacrifice.
yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
she started to project the next steps. And I was like, oh my God, there's a next step. I'm already exhausted as is. And that's when I was starting to think, okay, I need to review this whole work-life balance thing. I it's not working for me because I'm heading straight to burnout.
Mhm.
And that's what perfectionism was doing to me. And the other thing was with my son. I had one of those apps where you track the milestones that of development, that your child is supposed to reach at each month and each age. And um, I was I was thinking, okay, he's still not doing this. Okay, I'm going to make sure that we work on that. And I was becoming that mom that wanted to make sure her son was perfect,
Mhm.
literally. And
Yeah.
I would feel embarrassed sometimes in conversations when they would tell me that my friends would tell me that their kids were, reaching that milestone and mine wasn't. And so that's why when I told you that my son's diagnosis was a blessing, it was truly a blessing. It's because I that's when I realized that imperfection, if I can call it like that, is beautiful.
Mhm.
To me, my son is beautiful in every way. And wow, it was like a slap, I woke up suddenly and I thought to myself, okay, let's just stop. Like, why am I putting in so many efforts? I mean, and to me, there's this distinction, between excellence and perfectionism. Like, you can strive for excellence. You can do your best in order to make things look great and everything. But perfectionism at some point becomes an obsession because it doesn't exist. And
Mhm.
so it's you trying to reach that standard that doesn't exist. And
Mhm.
so you're never satisfied, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a constant lack of fulfillment when you're doing that because it's like you hit the finish line, but the finish line moved before you hit it. And it's
Exactly.
like, okay, now I have to do all this to get to that finish line. And then you get to that one and it's moved again. And it's just that pure lack of like acceptance for things of just how it is. It's this expectation identity that like, unless it is perfect, and like you said, it's the unobtainable, nothing is perfect. I mean, you look out in nature, no tree is perfect, no blade of
Exactly.
grass, like no flower, nothing is perfect. And it is. And I just love how you're saying how it's like when you that pure love for your son, and like and recognizing that nothing needs to be perfect, and then we can have that sense of love and belonging and worthiness without that perfection being there. And it's like such a beautiful thing, and it's a hard thing unless you've gone through that transition of realizing that to really feel that. But once you do, it just feel like it just opens up your whole life to realize like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to come down on myself and have these negative thoughts about myself and everything in my life. Like I can
Yeah.
just accept things for how they are and just embrace it and almost like surrender to what's in my life. And it's
Yeah.
just such a beautiful transition. Can you talk about as you've worked through perfectionism? Because I know perfectionism is not one of those things like for me too, it's like one of those things you have to always kind of keep in check a lot of times too. It's not like
Yeah.
I'm done, I will never think like that. Can you talk about your journey too? Like now you have this awareness of how things are. How have you allowed yourself to not get back into those patterns of
Mm.
perfectionism?
Yeah, that's a really good question because just like you said, it's an ongoing process. It never stops. It requires working on yourself regularly, and most importantly, when you identify the triggers that just get you back to that perfectionist, um, like at your top, And I think for me, the, the hardest, I guess the hardest part was realizing that my parents were a trigger to me. Like every
Mhm.
time I would go home, for celebrations, um, for um, holidays and stuff like that. I'm very close to my parents. I
Mhm.
love them with all my heart, and they were amazing at raising me. But my mom really struggles with perfectionism too, and so she passed that on to me as well, and she didn't have the intention to do that, of course. But now, every time I would go home, I would be triggered to be the perfect little girl again. And I realized that because in the way I would speak to her, I would mention the things that I know she'd be proud of and leave out the part that wouldn't really resonate with her, or that she would feel like it's not that good or stuff like that. Like, and it's crazy because she's been nothing but supportive, and
Mhm.
still I would like sometimes make sure that I say some things in a certain way, that I'm I just do whatever they ask me to do, and don't question it. And lately I've been starting to do that, and it led to some arguments, but because it was new to them, me telling them that this doesn't really align with my values, and I don't really like to do that, and I know that this is your vision of what it should look like, but I don't care,
Mhm.
and I don't want to force myself to do so. But I love you, I respect you, I know that it's these are your these are important to you, so I'm going to play by your rules, but you have to know that I'm not going to overstep that boundary, you know? So
Mhm.
I think that's the hardest part. It's with the people that you love the most and that have been in your life for too long, especially your parents, if you have, you know, a similar story like mine.
Mhm.
um, it's setting new boundaries that weren't there before so that you protect yourself
Yeah.
and you protect your new standards of what it
Mhm.
means to do things right or to be excellent or to have success in your
Mhm.
life. And so that was, I think, the hardest part of it, and it still is to this day, because again, it's something that is rooted deeply. It's a program that that you had when you were a child. So
Mhm.
and the same goes for everything else. This is the hardest part, but at work it's the same thing. It's making sure that you're not saying yes to something
Mhm.
because you want to make sure that you're appreciated and that people say that, wow, she's like she's perfect, she's everywhere. Like you ask her something, she shows up, she raises her hand, and and that requires a lot of um like making it a frequent like assessment. I journal a lot, for example, and that's what I always tell my clients, like to journal about how they behave during the day, and not in a judgmental way, but more like an observer and just looking at your patterns so that you can realize that, oh my God, yeah, I did that again today. I did do that thing that I said I wouldn't do. And if you just go through the motions, you don't really realize these little things until at some point you're burnt out and you think, oh, I think that I might I may have overstepped some boundaries here, you know?
Yeah, it's so true. And yeah, I journal too, and it is such a great tool, and it
Yeah,
is that built-in pause that you have to really look back at how you're doing things, and everything you just said, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so relatable, and it's that sense of identity, and it's really hard. I can totally relate to, being that little girl that's trying to make everything perfect, and you are trying to stick to this box that you feel like is your identity of how people observe you, especially those
yeah,
closest to you, and it can be really challenging to break out of that. I can completely relate to that, and it can also be hard because I know you talk about, like, you love your parents, you have a good relationship with them, but yet they're triggers. It's really hard to conceptualize like how that can be, but it's so true. And I've gone through a lot of the same very similar things because I have a very similar relationship, and I'm like, but how? But it is, because when you have this like perfectionist identity, and it's like, I'm not this person, like, you've evolved, and yet there's this box that the people that know you as that are trying to put you back into it, subconsciously, but
yeah.
you have grown out of this box and you're much more than that. And it can be really, really challenging, but I love how you talk about those boundaries, like it's for your own protection, like this is what you need, and that there needs to be that mutual respect of like, I need this, you need that, and just having that communication is huge. Yeah. Can you talk about identity and values? Because it is that like North Star. We tend to go back to like what we identify as. We tend to go back to what our values are. How have you been able to evolve that and realize like what you internally desire and separate the difference between like what life tells you should desire and what you desire?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kelly. Yeah. Actually, for me, it was, I had an ongoing conflict inside of me. Like it was as if there were two parts of me literally trying to rip me apart. Like one part wanted to go that way, the other part wanted to go this way. And it's exactly like you described, it's conformity versus my own desires and dreams. And so once I really started to connect with my values and I did, a bunch of assessments and stuff like that. And like I said, I had the help of coaches as well. And that really opened my eyes to the fact that I didn't want to admit that to me, and this might be a little vulnerable for me to say like that out loud, but that family was definitely an important value, but it didn't come as number one.
Mhm.
And there was another value that was even higher, that was personal growth and challenging myself,
Mhm.
I realized that at some point I needed to accept that I had to leave room for this value to expand,
Mhm.
because that was going to make me an even better um, daughter, parent, sister, wife, and and I can even describe the relief of when you just realize that this conflict is like a knot inside that is just release, and it feels so amazing once you just reconnect with that, because then you're okay redefining who you are according to your values,
Mhm.
and your actions start to match that identity, and so you feel more aligned with who you who you think you are,
Mhm.
as opposed to thinking you should be that way, but your actions and your feelings are not, like, there's something's wrong, like it's not this fluid motion, you know.
Mhm.
And to me that was really hard to admit, because I'm a mom. Family is supposed to be like my top priority, and I know negotiable, like, and it is, again, it is a priority, but it's also not the only priority I have in my life, and it took me really a really long time to admit it, even to myself.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that is such a huge thing, because it is, again, it's like that kind of like society tells you this is what should be your priority, but
Yeah.
you felt that you were connecting with that personal development and growth more, and it really, the more you grow, the better you are for your family, so that's a beautiful thing, but allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to be like, no, this is what I resonate with, this is what I need to follow, and that's huge, and I think it's something that really, for any mom who's struggling with this, needs to hear, because again, there can be guilt
Yeah,
that comes along with it. How is that not your top priority? But you
exactly.
still are, you're who you are, and it's like you serve the role as a mom, but again, as you evolve and you become a better person, you become a better mom, so that all grows because of that. And that's the beauty about
Absolutely.
values. It's like when you elevate anything in your life, everything in your life elevates. So even though it's maybe not be the top value, it's going to elevate your role as a mom because you have grown. And
Exactly.
that's the most beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing that, because that's again something that I can relate as a mom. Like it is like, how can that not be your top priority? But like I also have different values that are not, like, family's not one of my top ones either. And it
Mm.
is like I can very much relate to that personal growth. But I have seen, as I grow, my family is getting better, because like my mindset, and I'm sure you feel this too, is that your mindset grows and then everything else evolves, and you're giving your child a gift of having this growth mindset, which is the most beautiful gift you can give your child, to realize that like you can always evolve in your own life. So
Yeah.
absolutely love that. One I want to ask you, and I this is what I was thinking about earlier, is like, can you talk about self-compassion and how that's played a role in your journey? Because this is,
Mhm.
again, one of those things, as a perfectionist, self-compassion can be really hard to even conceptualize and even apply, because it's always at like sticking it to yourself to keep going, like
Oh
pushing
yeah.
yourself harder and harder. So like to have compassion feels like, no, I can't let off the gas pedal because things will fall apart. So can you talk
Yeah.
about your journey with self-compassion?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. Actually, I think this is the one that I that came a little bit late, in the process of the
Mhm.
whole identity shift transformation that I went through. And I think and I wanted to add this as well. Like I see so many women who are um, being so hard on themselves because of that guilt that we spoke of, because family turns out to be not priority number one, and they are conflicted about that, and they overdo it, they overdo things, with their role as a mom, and trying to, as if they were trying to make up for not feeling like this is the top priority. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does.
I
Yeah.
know
Like
that,
compensating. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And I think that self-compassion comes really handy in this case as well, because not only you need to just accept what you're feeling, because there are your feelings, and it's your body sending you signals and messages, um, and there is no bad message. It's just an emotion or a feeling, is something that you need to listen to. Doesn't mean that you're going to do things this way or the other way, but at least listen to what's happening, because the more you try to shut it down, the more you are hurting yourself.
Mhm.
And if you're hurting yourself, you're also hurting the ones that you love. And
Mhm.
so I think that the concept of self-compassion is really important, because at some point you need to um but to me it didn't come naturally. That's what I wanted to say.
Mhm.
I literally had to force it at the beginning. Like, I forced myself. I know it sounds weird to say that, but I forced myself to write, sorry, love letters to myself every
Mhm.
first of the month. That's just something that
I
I
love
started to
that.
do.
Mhm.
And because at first I used to write letters to my old self at each birthday. Like, okay, this is the last letter for my, I don't know, 30 something self. And now I do it every month. I've been doing it for a whole year, and it's been so helpful because it forces me to just, it's a love letter. So it forces me to think in terms of love, of compassion, of appreciation for
Mhm.
myself and for what I've been through the past month. I made it monthly because I realized that I needed to be more frequent.
Mhm.
And this this is, for example, a practice that has really helped me change the way I perceive some of my quote unquote failures, right?
Mhm.
And the setbacks and everything. And it's been helpful. I can see that by doing it every month, I am more aware of these moments when I talk to myself in a way that I wouldn't, I would never talk to like that to my best friend or to my son or to anyone that I love. And
Mhm.
so, you get these moments where you're like, wow, why am I talking to myself like that? But these moments, these moments of awareness, they don't happen unless you force a routine or something that makes you look into your behavior and see your patterns in a manner that is repetitive and consistent. So yeah, this is my way of doing it.
Yeah, I love that. I have they're the first person I've heard talk about that, and I love that tool that you use, and it's just that's amazing because it's such an intent to show yourself love and it's structured, but then I also love how you talk about when you do that, it brings more awareness throughout the rest of the month, and what a beautiful gift to yourself. I love that tool, and, like, if anyone's taking anything from that, like, start doing that. Like, I feel like I'm gonna start implementing that. I love that tool. It's such a beautiful tool, so thank you for sharing that, and something so, like, actionable and not overwhelming. It's not like you have to do that every night. Like first of the month, like that's definitely something you can implement without feeling like you're bombarding yourself with more things. I love
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
I feel like we could talk all day. There are so many things that are just like struggles for again moms, working moms, and trying to navigate that balance. And but I there you've provided so much insight into how you can make that work and how you can honor yourself, honor your family without sacrificing yourself in the process. So I absolutely love this conversation. And for someone who wanted to connect with you and reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. So if anyone wants to find me, they can reach out to me through Facebook. I created a private community for fellow career-driven moms that is called the Mom Shift Community. And you can also follow me on Instagram. So it's my name underscore my last name, so Rim Chekroun. And there's of course the podcast that is called the Mom Shift podcast as well, that you can listen to on Spotify, that comes out weekly.
Yes, definitely check it out. I'm going to put everything in the show notes too. So if you're
Thank you.
listening, check out the show notes and definitely connect with Rim. I love everything that you have shared today, and just like your journey that you've lived this, you've experienced this, you have just a deeper understanding of what women and moms are going through, and how there's so many little nuances and little feelings that we feel, and how to navigate that and how to love ourselves in the process. So definitely encourage you to reach out to Rim. And thank you again, Rim, for being on here today. It's been a pleasure to having you on.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. It's been my pleasure as well.
Thank you. And again, for anyone who's listening, please share this podcast. If you feel like you know a mom who is struggling to navigate this balance between being a mom, being a working mom, and trying to be a professional all at the same process, share this episode, because you just never know what gem you can take from this that could help someone move their life forward. So again, thank you again for listening and being part of this community. Hey there, thanks for listening to this episode. I hope it serves you well to start rewiring your brain to create the life you desire. If you found value in this, please share it with a friend and tag me on Facebook or Instagram at Dr. Kelly Kessler.